Hey, what's up guys? So we're going to be talking about how to beat Chaos Dragons because it's a very popular deck and it is very strong and some people just have a hard time against it. And I know sometimes you can't do anything just because they've already set up, they've got too many lights and darks in the graveyard and it can become a threat. But let me show you guys how to beat it and maybe this will help you guys out have a better matchup against them. So, first off, just as a note, Light Pulsar is the main card in the deck. Once you get rid of these or stop them from coming out really quick, you can beat them quite fast because they don't run very much back row because they want high monster count so they can get the mill in and get those lights and darks in the graveyard. So that said, let's talk about some of the cards to prevent them from establishing a good field, and we're also going to talk about how to stop their field after they've essentially made their field. So let's go ahead and get started with the first part, and that's going to be essentially how to prevent them from coming out. So a great card is Kaiku. Now Kaiku stops them not only from getting out their plays, but also it stops them from having those lights and darks in the graveyard. So generally, versus Chaos Dragons, they're usually going to summon Lila first turn, so that allows them to mill. Keep in mind they can always have Honest, so you got to factor that in as well. But Kaiku is a very great card because it runs over Lila. It's pretty decent as far as attack. It's 1800, and not only does it allow you to remove once you've inflicted battle damage, so you can start removing those darks and lights from their graveyard, but it also stops them from removing cards from their graveyard. But you can still get your cards removed from your graveyard. So what you can do is you can still go for Light Pulsars, but they can't. So it really helps out in that aspect. And as well as getting over Lila first turn is important because generally they will always make Lila first turn. But something you got to take into consideration, sometimes they do have Jane, so perhaps maybe they've activated like a Charge Light Brigade, they've milled Jane, then you could be safe with the Kaiku. But generally, they will have like a slow recharge, they can keep on cycling and going through cards quite quick. Jane is something that you have to consider that they could have. Same thing with Thunder King, Jane does run over it. Sure, Thunder King, can just easily can go away just from them going Light Pulsar and you go negate, they'll just go, oh, okay, I'll just discard and go for Light Pulsar again. Sometimes if they don't have those options, Thunder King can stop them dead in their tracks, but you have to draw these cards early on, otherwise, once they have a Light Pulsar on the field, it's kind of difficult to deal with, and so Thunder King Kaiku, definitely great cards to open up with against them. Some other great cards, these ones kind of stop their summoning, essentially. Black Horn of Heaven, Bottomless Trap Hole, and Deep Dark Trap Hole. If you guys are unfamiliar with Deep Dark Trap Hole, what it does is, when a level 5 or higher effect monster is special summoned, you banish that monster, and it's really good because it doesn't destroy it. As you guys know, Bottomless is a great card as well, and I think Bottomless is definitely better overall. However, Deep Dark Trap Hole is great because it doesn't destroy the monster. So, just as an example, say someone summons Stardust Dragon, you can activate Deep Dark Trap Hole. Stardust Dragon cannot respond because you're not destroying, you're just removing or banishing the monster. Black Horn of Heaven is also another great option against Light Pulsar. However, again, they can just discard 2 cards out of their hand and get back Light Pulsar. 1 light, 1 dark, and they can still just get it out. Whereas when you Bottomless or Deep Dark Trap Hole it, it's going to be gone for a while. There's not really any Chaos Dragons that will play like Burrow from a different dimension, so you'll be okay on that. But I would say definitely one of the best stuff to prevent them from doing anything early on in the game is Bottomless and Kaiku. Keep in mind, it's also a great idea to Bottomless that first Lila that they summon, because not only does that prevent 1 light from going to the graveyard, but it also prevents them from sending cards from the top of the deck to the graveyard during the end phase, and that can be really key because you can stop them in their tracks and you can overextend against Chaos Dragons because they don't have any back row. Depending on what deck you're playing, you can always still get Darkhold, so you still can get punished for it, but yeah, just keep that in mind that you can overextend without worrying too much because generally they don't play too much back row. Another card that I wanted to mention was Magic Drain. Now, Magic Drain was a card that some people actually used against Lightsworn a long time ago when Lightsworn was really popular. And it's great to stop this card right here, Solar Recharge. Because Solar Recharge is a cost, they still have to go -1. So they have to go Solar Recharge, discard Jane, and you go Magic Drain. If it successfully activates, you are in such a good position. Sure, they get 1 light in the grave, but you still +1 essentially. And on top of that, if they want to discard like a spell card, let's say, to negate Magic Drain, they are still going minus. So essentially, it is still a plus for you. But, this card might not be for everyone, but if you can draw early on and stop a Solar Recharge, it is actually quite viable. Next card I want to talk about is Royal Prison. So this stops monsters from being special summoned from the graveyard, and those cards are basically going to be like Ray as Darkness Metal, stop Plague Spreader, but there's a lot of other things, as well as this can stop Darkholds, but this card could be okay, maybe if you just have some extra room, but yeah, against Darkholds this card wouldn't be too bad either. However, I will always say Bottomless is definitely better. Another great card is Light Imprisoning Mirror. just because they have Lila, and Lila will always pop your side deck cards. Side deck cards like, say, for example, Dimensional Fissure or Macrocosmos. They will just summon Lila, and they'll just get rid of this card or Macrocosmos really easy. But Lion Prismatic Mirror stops them from actually doing that, as well as stops the mill, because majority of Chaos Dragons will play 2 to 3 Lila, so they'll always will have Lila, and they'll always just pop whatever you side against them. They're like things like Dimensional Fissure and Macrocosmos. So Light Imprisoning Mirror is great because it stops the mill, it stops Light Pulsar's effect from activating, it stops the Eclipse Wyvern effect, so pretty good stuff there. Basically just stopping the Lila and being able to have more back row, because Lila will just pop whatever you have and it can become a problem. Another card, Dimensional Fissure, great card against them as well, just for the removal aspect, and it can stop them in their tracks. Same thing with Macrocosmos. And another card, Chaos Trap Hole, which does remove them as well. So, pretty good card. You do have to pay 2,000 life points. However, I do like this card over Solemn Warning sometimes, because it gets the removal. So it can, you have to pay 2,000 life points, and it negates the summon of a light or dark monster, and it removes it from play. But keep in mind, you cannot activate this against cards like Monster Reborn, because it's another card bringing out another card. Same thing with like Call of the Haunted. You'll have to stop inherent special summons. That would be something like Light Pulsar. So if you can Chaos Trap Hole a Light Pulsar, it is pretty darn good. Chaos Trap Hole versus Lila, not the greatest thing sometimes, but sometimes if you need to do it, and you have the ability to OTK your opponent quite fast, it can be good. And the last card I want to talk about, just to stop them from kind of setting up, DD Crow, depending on how the game is going, you can stop them with DD Crow. When they go for that Light Pulsar effect, you can just remove their target. Generally, they will only play 2 Red as Darkness Metals, and if you can remove those 2 Red as Darkness Metals early on, like maybe you bottomless one, and you see that they milled another one, you could just activate Crow if you want to just do it early on, or you can kind of wait for them to go for a Reborn, and you can just go Crow. Crow very good against Insector as well, so it's one of those cards where it sides versus multiple decks, and that's always key to have in your side deck. And now we're going to talk about some of the cards to prevent your opponent from, kind of winning after they've established their field. Generally, their field will look like something like this. They'll basically have a Light Pulsar and a Red as Darkness Metal. This is very common for them to just go for a Light Pulsar and Red as Darkness Metal and have those on the field. They'll generally have no back row. Now, there's these cards right here that are pretty good. Soul Taker, first of all, very good card. And what happens is you're going to want to target the Light Pulsar, and they'll gain 1,000 life points, which forces them to miss the timing on Light Pulsar once it hits the graveyard. So very good, as well as this can force Elementeer the Shining to miss timing as well. So again, it's one of those cards where it can be used in multiple side decks. So keep in mind, you want to Soul Taker majority of the time that Light Pulsar, because it will miss the timing on its effect to get back Red as Darkness Metal, which is what they generally will go for. Another card, Leeching the Light. This was very popular against Agents. But if you're playing a deck that can swarm, like for example, Six Samurais is a deck that can swarm, you get to swarm your field, and you get to select one light monster your opponent controls, and increase the attack of all your monsters by that attack. So all your monsters on the field will gain 2,500 attack, and basically you can OTK your opponent. So very good card, and it was a great card against Agents. Another card, this is great for the mirror match, Victoria. So once per turn you can select one Dragon-type monster from your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your side of the field. Your opponent cannot select another face-up Fairy-type monster as an attack target. So you probably won't use the second effect, but it's still good just to have an additional effect. Maybe you're playing something that runs fairies, so maybe this will be a little bit better for you. But generally, it's basically used to get back Red as Darkness Metal. Sometimes they'll just end with a Light Pulsar on their field, and they'll have a Red as Darkness Metal in the graveyard. If you can essentially take the Red as Darkness Metal, it is very key to taking it. If you have Monster Reborn, you can, reborn the Red as Darkness Metal, and it is a problem for them to get over Red as Darkness Metal. If they don't have a Plague Spreader to sync, go for an 8 and, either get rid of this early on, they can just straight up lose, because what's great about Victoria, this monster doesn't, go away. It stays on the field until it basically dies. There's no, end phase, or, there's no negative effect. It's not like when Victoria leaves, Red as Darkness Metal leaves as well. So, very good card, especially in the mirror match, because your opponent doesn't have control over what they're milling. So, if you can have your opponent mill out a Red as Darkness Metal early on, and you can reborn it, sometimes you can finish off the game quite quick. Or, you can summon Victoria. So that is a very good card, especially against the mirror match. Another great card is Grave of the Super Ancient Organism. So what that does is all face-up level 6 or higher special summon monsters on the field cannot declare an attack or activate their effects. However, I do not think this card might be the best card, I would say, because of Lila just being able to go, okay, I'll just pop that card, and then you're just going to get OTK'd. So that might not be the best option. And another card I want to talk about, Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. Now this is very similar to Compulse, although this puts it back to the top deck, so perhaps if they have a Lila, they'll end up milling the card, so you can kind of play around with that. But basically, you can finish off Chaos Dragons quite quick, especially if you can just bounce back Light Pulsar, because they basically rely on Light Pulsar to be able to have their defense. So, whatever you do, they'll just be like, okay, get back Rise Darkness Metal, and then you have to deal with the 2800, and you usually can't OTK them when they have this in the graveyard and this on the field. But if you have to have the ability to send this card back, like with Compulse, or Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, or maybe Bryo it, you can kind of OTK them. However, they do play Tragodia sometimes. But yeah, generally they don't play very much back row, so you can OTK Chaos Dragons if you have the opportunity to do so, as long as, they don't have Gores or something like that. But once they mill Gores, you can, or they mill Tragodia and Gores, you can usually just kind of overextend and finish them off for game, because they won't really play Battle Fader. Another great card to stop them after they've established their field is Dimensional Prison. Although this card's a little bit slower, it does still put in work, because getting rid of that Light Pulsar permanently is kind of what hinders their deck from functioning correctly. And then we're going to talk about Soul Release. Now this is kind of a late game card. However, once they've established this field, if you can activate a Soul Release when they've established their field, and you can Soul Release the Red Eyes Darkness Metals that they have in the graveyard. Let's say they don't have this on the field. They have Light Pulsar out. They're just waiting for the Light Pulsar to go to the graveyard. If you can just remove it, and then you can just kind of go off from there. You can destroy Light Pulsar. Light Pulsar won't have any targets. As well as, just them being able to have no Darks and Lights in the graveyard does hurt them. Although sometimes the deck goes too fast, and I don't think this card is the best. But, it's still a viable card. Next card I want to talk about is Electric Virus. Now this is one of the most popular things to side against them, especially in the mirror match. However, generally when they're gonna go for their play, they're gonna finish you off quite fast, because they're gonna expect Electric Virus in maybe game 2 and 3. So keep that in mind, that you can just straight up get OTK'd. However, if you're playing a deck like Frog Monarchs, this card is very great, because you're gonna have Battle Faders to keep yourself alive, and then you can just OTK them back because you have enemy controllers, you have Electric Virus. Pretty good stuff over there. And then last card I want to talk about, now this is kind of mostly viable in Zectors, but, Messenger of Peace is still a viable card, but again, it's one of those cards where Lila can just go, okay, pop. And that is something you always got to remember. Lila can just pop whatever you side against them, and that's why the deck has a really good matchup against a majority of decks, because, again, they just have that Lila, they just pop one, so they get rid of whatever problematic card is on the field, and then they're just going to try to finish you off. So I would say one of the best side deck cards versus them is definitely Soul Taker and Leeching the Light. And a lot of people do like Soul Taker, but I personally think if you're running a deck that can swarm, you could just use Leeching the Light instead of Soul Taker, just because you can finish them off quite quick. Although Leeching the Light might not be a card that you could main deck, Soul Taker is a card that you definitely can main deck and make it useful versus a majority of decks. But yeah, just keep that in mind, that a Leeching Light probably not the best thing to main deck, unless you know that you're going to be playing like Chaos Dragons every time, or just like decks that run lights. So I would say probably the most viable cards to side deck. These are my personal choices. If you guys have any other cards that you think that are great against Chaos Dragons, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I think that those are really great cards. I think Light Prison Mirror is a very great side deck card, but as far as the main deck, I would say Bottomless is definitely something you can main deck. Kaiku is good against a lot of different decks as well, but I would say for the main deck, I would definitely think Bottomless is the only thing that I really think is super viable, because it's used against a majority of decks. However, in the side, I would say that these 5 down there are probably one of my personal favorites. This is also one of my favorite cards to side deck, but it's not that great against Chaos Dragons because it doesn't banish them, and banishing the cards is very important. So if you're looking for cards to side deck, I would say definitely, by far, Bottomless is going to be your best friend. Kaiku is also a very great choice, just because it not only is able to remove them, but it stops them from getting their cards out. So these, I would say definitely, those two are definitely one of my favorite cards. Light Prison is also a great option, and same with Deep Dark Trap Hole. So I hope this helps you guys out, have a better matchup against Chaos Dragons, and I hope you guys win versus Chaos Dragons with this help. With the help of this video. But thanks for watching, guys. Again, if there's any cards that you thought that were great against Chaos Dragons that I forgot to mention, please feel free to leave them down below in the comment section. But thanks for watching. Asian Eyes White Dragon, signing out.